Welcome to Film Crusade. So, Amari, what are we talking about today?
All right, so we got another double feature. So we got the first one being Pinocchio, the Robert Zemeckis one, and the second one being Apollo 10 and a half. Did you just giggle?
Directed, huh?
Did you just giggle?
No, I had like a little cough.
Oh,
Kind of like clear my throat.
oh,
Like,
because you could giggle with the let's just say averageness. That's so harsh, actually.
yeah,
That's so harsh. It's for Pinocchio. We're gonna start off with Pinocchio first because Pinocchio was okay, it wasn't the worst thing in the world.
it was all right. I think a lot of reviews are labeling this like already like a sin as bad as the Lion King remake, which admittedly I haven't seen. But no, I don't think so anyway. Like I knew I was never gonna watch the Lion King remake as soon as the trailers came out. Because for one thing, heavy nostalgia with the original. For another thing, why would you make a CGI live action remake of something that is gonna be all CGI anyway? And number three, they just no expression, just dead eyes the entire time. Whenever I watched any trailer, I was like, "Oh, we're seeing Hakuna Matata, but it's from animals that have zero expression because the animals are so realistic that there's no character to them."
I remember,
Um,
the argument for that movie was like, it's an animated movie. No, it's live action. I remember that was like a whole argument. And even to this day, even I'm kind of like, well, it is a live action, but it's really just animation. It's really just
yeah,
it's just CGI'd this time. It's not really much of a live action. We can say it's live action, but it's just CGI to
it's
make.
also half an hour longer than the original or something.
Is it actually?
And
I watched that one too, and I was bored. That
and
was
they cut down "Be Prepared" to like 2 minutes supposedly. I'm like, it's so weird. Like, okay, to kind of spoil a bit of what our thoughts on Zemeckis' Pinocchio. There's only like a 20 or 15-minute difference, and
I haven't seen the original one since I was like a wee lad. So
yeah, and I watched the two of them simultaneously. Kind of like I watched the first hour of the original, waiting for my mom to get ready to watch the new one. And Pinocchio's like the original stories like was her favorite childhood story. I think she also really liked the original movie because she probably watched it some when she was little. But watched the first hour of the original and then like right before they get to Pleasure Island. And then watch the full thing of the new one and then watch the last half hour of the old one. And that was how I watched the two of them because I, of course, haven't seen Pinocchio since I was like 4 years old.
yeah.
And there's a lot of aspects that they changed in the name of, oh yeah, you can't do that anymore, like like racist stereotypes and crap. Can't really do that in this day and age. And you kind of look and you're like, wow. But of course, it's a 82-year-old movie or something. So
I just think the whole story of Pinocchio just it's really sus. It's a sus story that Disney was like, we're gonna do it. Like, dude, oh my god, there is
yeah,
like so much shit in there. But like, okay, but like I'm sidetracking.
yeah,
I'm sidetracking is the fact that Robert Zemeckis' version is I said this to a friend of mine where like he was asking me how it was, and I was like, you know, some things can be translated from animation to live action. This is not one
yeah.
of them. Like if you do a like this was trying to do a straight adaptation, minus some things like you were saying.
Yeah,
Of
and adding some other things
yeah, of
also because it's taking away the racist crap from the original.
course.
And I mainly it's not even that bad for parts of it because it's like, oh yeah, exaggerated Italian stereotypes with Stromboli, the guy who runs the
Yeah,
circus, and
that
it's which even that I'm kind of like, that was the time, obviously, and that's still some stuff that happens today, but and then there was also when they go to Pleasure Island, a lot of that stuff was changed of like, oh yeah, they're smoking cigars like Pinocchio and lamp Lampwick
Like,
are smoking cigars while they play pool and drinking something that
that was
is
awesome.
not root beer compared to the new one where they're drinking root beer and no cigars are being smoked. And in fact, the cigars are all a certain like Native American brand as well, kind of thing of like, it's like, oh yeah, they smoke tobacco. It's just kind of like, oh wow,
It's
yeah, that wouldn't fly today.
it's just
Um,
it's just that this new one for me. I was just like, okay, like, all right, it's bad. I'm just gonna say it's bad. I'm not gonna say it's like terrible, but it was just I was bored. Like it takes 20 minutes. I remember
yeah,
like
compared to
pausing
the
the
original, the pacing here was
yeah, it was
not good.
because it was like I was watching. All right, I watched it with I watched it with my mom, and we paused it, and because we had to go, I was like I wanted to do something, or I had to go do something or whatever really quickly, and I was like, holy shit, we're 22 minutes into this movie.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? I was like, why am I 22 minutes into this movie? Like, and it's all set up. It's just, but it's just not even. It's like it's taking such a long time for to establish. What was it, Gespetto? But as it
Geppetto.
Gespetto, I keep saying Gespetto.
Yeah, because they take like a minute to set up Geppetto in the original one.
Well,
So it's kind of like,
that's the advantage though of
yeah,
that's the advantage of animation is that you have like you're on a budget. Like you have to
yeah,
have like your shots need to be planned out months in advance. So your script has to be really tight. You gotta make sure every single shot matters. Where in this one, since it's live action, yeah, there's still a budget, but it's kind of like, they can kind of take a little bit more time. They can kind of do a little bit more stuff with it. And it was just like I was like, what the hell? And then after the 20-minute mark, it just speeds through the rest of the story.
yeah.
And then like, and I think I got bored actually during the third act. I just got bored
Well, there's certain things that this movie does that is just like it tries to fit the modern formula with Pinocchio of like, so for example, you have all this weird slapstick stuff that's not part of the original that just is like added fluff of like, oh yeah, like it was funny in the original Pinocchio when the other like fox cat thing hit the hammer on the head of Honest John. Um, it was funny when that happened, and it was a one-time thing, and then like, oh yeah, then it's dropped, and she runs away or whatever. And but here they're like, oh, let's add even more of the hammer shenanigans because it was funny so much in the original one. But it didn't need to happen two more times in quick succession to continue to be funny. It could have just replicated the same joke and been like that. But no, it had to be like
I mean, there was just some
3 minutes longer than the original version.
like it's
Um,
I don't know, it's just this one is just but it's also like some stuff doesn't really translate as well as live action. Like Tom Hanks. Love Tom Hanks. Let's get that out of the way for a second. Love Tom Hanks.
yeah,
Great, tremendous actor, honestly. One of the best. The portrayal of just I keep
and
on
Geppetto,
I keep
Geppetto.
on saying Geppetto because it sounds like a spice. Geppetto. It sounds like a spice. Anyway, Geppetto, like his portrayal of Geppetto was it kind of creeped me out. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, I know there's a
I
motivation.
get that. Yeah,
Like you explained to me that there was, and like there is a motivation as to why he creates Pinocchio. And
yeah. Here, there's a motivation in the original. Not really. But that's in the name of
it's
efficiency.
like
He just makes a wooden boy, and he's like, "I wish that wooden boy was real." Here, there's like a little more to it,
yeah,
but it also really takes its time to making sure you know what exact, rather than just like
but
showing you. You got to hear Tom Hanks say it, and
like
like the two biggest problems I think are the script and like all the extra fluff that they added. It also kind of felt like the original Pinocchio is very male dominated, like extremely male dominated. So they like, I don't like to be this person because I think that the people who complain about this crap are stupid of like, oh, it's woke culture coming in. But it did feel like Zemeckis and his team were like, "Oh, we got to add like a bunch of female characters to balance this out for our diversity quota."
And a bunch of people,
And
a bunch of black and brown people. They had like there was a lot of. I mean, it was almost like there was.
which is good.
It
It's
was
not a
good.
problem, but it's like adding stuff to the movie that was unnecessary
It's
in
like
the end.
it's. I would say it's like trying too hard. It's really
Yeah.
trying to be diverse, which is good that you are diverse. But when you're like really like forcing it down people's throats, it kind of
What's also interesting about it is, with the exception of Keegan Michael Key as Honest John, um, which they real like. What's weird is they like shorten certain characters' roles compared to the original. Like Honest John does turn back up in the original movie, where he really only shows up in that one segment here. But with the exception of Honest John being voiced by Keegan Michael Key, pretty much every person of color or woman or diverse person added to the movie is just a good person. Um, that kind of thing, which kind of deflates the movie a bit because it's supposed to be about Pinocchio going out into the world and facing all these issues. But if half the people he runs into are nice people,
yeah.
it's kind of like, oh, here's an evil person, here's a nice person, here's an evil person, here's a nice person.
And you can't really like because then it just sends the wrong message if you're going to be putting like if you have like you see like, the first female character in the movie like and you're like oh my god this is great and then she's evil you're like oh like, kind of sus and then he's like oh first black person we see in the movie oh great oh he
Yeah,
that kind of says
but
like
it's also a thing of like, okay, yeah, it's weird. It's a weird choice that, like, for example, the only female character really in the original Pinocchio movie is in fact the Blue Fairy, who is a white woman with blonde hair in the original version. And here it's Cynthia Erivo, and she gets to kind of slightly obnoxiously sing "When You Wish Upon a Star" after monologuing about the plot of the movie to come. And she's just like, "Oh yeah, this is the song y'all know," and
that
they,
that reminded me of something really quickly because
yeah,
that segment when she's explaining everything one it goes on for way too damn long number
yes.
two number two
Again, another segment that takes 1 to 2 minutes in the original,
yeah
that takes like 5-10 minutes in the remake.
Jiminy Cricket voice
Yep.
Levitt.
That was what I was going to say was my second problem outside of the script, is Joseph Gordon-Levitt is just doing an impersonation of the guy from the original movie, and with jokes that are whatever.
He,
Um
there's just too much.
except one. Or no, wait, that was Honest John's joke that I actually thought was funny. There was one joke that I found funny, and it was a Keegan Michael Key thing. So
I found the part when he was yelling no, the funniest part when he was in the jar. There's a part where he gets trapped in a jar and he's like yelling no. And he says no twice. And it's again that thing you're saying earlier about repeating the same
yeah.
joke again. He does it one more time. And
And
my
of course, that whole thing is like not how it happens in the original, because in the original, Jim, I guess because in the name of making Jiminy Cricket a good person, a completely good person, he's trapped in that for so long.
yeah.
Where in the original, Jiminy Cricket tries to convince Pinocchio and doesn't end up convincing Pinocchio properly, to where they go off without him and he like chases after them. He watches the show, and when Pinocchio falls over, Jiminy's like, "Okay, go ahead, make a fool of yourself. See where that gets you." And then he succeeds, and then Jiminy Cricket gets all mad and like leaves, and then comes back. But that wouldn't really work with our modern sensibilities of, he's supposed to be his conscience. Why is he being a dick about this? So instead, they just trap him in a jar for 20 minutes of the movie.
I'm telling you that when he was yelling no, my mom busted out laughing. She was like, "Why was that in there?" And I was like, "I don't even know." And it's so dramatic because he pauses and then goes no,
No.
and I was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, there was some unintentionally funny bits, I think.
I'm,
But the funniest bit for me is like the Keegan Michael Key's Honest John, when he's talking about like the school thing of like, is it a child led program and all that? But that's because I'm a teacher. So like I was just laughing at some of that as a teacher. Um,
I think that just
does he adapt to different learning styles? That's very funny to me.
I mean, I feel these like minor spoilers, but I don't really think anybody really cares about Pinocchio.
Yeah, I mean, y'all know the story of
Yeah,
Pinocchio.
but I just don't think that's the other thing about this movie is the fact that it's just like there's the opening or the first act takes way too damn long to get into. It is
Yeah,
establishing so much shit that we already that you can really establish like in 5 minutes, not even. But then it's like Jiminy Cricket. It feels like the movie's gonna be about Jiminy Cricket, but then the movie's not about Jiminy Cricket, it's about Pinocchio because I feel like I see more Jiminy Cricket in the opening, like in the first act. And
yeah, he's like really there, and it's from his perspective, which is what Pinocchio, the original, does too. But it's very clear that he's telling a story about because he talks about, I bet you don't believe that when you wish upon a star, your dream comes true. But I'm here to tell you that I used to not believe that, but now I do because I met this boy that changed my mind about everything, that whole thing.
I feel like
And so it's very clearly supposed to be about Pinocchio
the
from
movie,
the way he's telling the
the
story.
movie just strips
Not so with,
the movie just strips so much stuff like
yeah,
from the original. But even just I mean it doesn't feel like its own thing. It's like with Watchmen. Like it
yeah.
plays all the notes, but just like what was it? The expression was played on.
Yeah, plays all um plays the correct music or whatever, but doesn't hit the notes properly or whatever.
Yeah, or it's just I mean
Um,
this one does. I mean even like and I
plays the correct notes, but doesn't like it doesn't have any technique to it, that kind of thing.
I mean there's
So
just no soul.
something like that.
I mean there's just no soul. There's a couple like camera shots that remind me of like the Polar Express because Zemeckis.
Yeah, I
Like
think it's like it looks good for the most part. Like there's no
almost,
issue with what it looks like.
I
Um,
that for me that's another thing with that one. It was just it just
I
feels
mean,
so
compared to most
compared
Disney
to most of them, yeah,
properties,
it just feels so
but
Pinocchio as a character feels so out of place because I'm
yeah.
like because you're translating a cartoon and you're making it into a live action and it just feels so off to me in the whole thing because the whole like the visuals of it just I was like this feels so off like it just feels very just like all
Hmm.
right we're just putting the movie the anime movie we're putting a live action and then here you go I guess
Yeah,
we'll
with
just
a bit more and a bit less. And
yeah it's
here's the interesting thing is that because the story is that powerful, though, of like what it's supposed to be about, of like don't try to change who you are, just be who you are, that kind of thing. Where I was like, fucking damn it. The like even the live action remake that is not great is getting me choked up.
really
But it's mainly because Tom Hanks is Tom
nah,
Hanks. So
there's
and that last little bit of like, I don't know why you think you wanted to be a real boy, but um you are a real boy to me, even though you're what I was still kind of like, ah.
really
But I was also like, why is it making me do this? Because
I
the original movie doesn't need all that fluff. It's
I
like,
was
oh yeah, you're a real boy.
I was rolling my eyes the entire time all the fluffy shit which
No, I was rolling my eyes for the majority of the really we're doing the fake out death thing, that kind of thing, because
yeah there's just way too much fluff but it's not even good fluff it's like I would have rather what's his face who directed Paddington. Oh my goodness.
Paul King would have done
Paul
such a
King.
great job
Paul
with
King would have done
that.
a better job of doing this because then it's like it's the right amount of fluff, but it's also fun, it's whimsical, it's
Yeah.
emotional, it's good. It's like it's you get your whole package in there. So it's just this one. It just felt like they were just kind of like, all right, here you go, and and you can feel it too because they spend so much time in the opening and then the rest of the movie is just kind of like, okay, here's this, here's this, here's this. We're gonna spend a little bit more time here, ending. All right, we're good. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, that was fast. I guess I'm happy that it's over.
Yeah.
But why? Why? It's just it's a movie where it's like it's just no. And for me, it's like no. I don't hate it really
Yeah.
because I think there's I don't hate it, but it's just
I don't necessarily think it's worth
uh,
watching, but it is an idiosyncratic kind of thing that I wasn't. Some people have like tried to label certain things, and I'm like, I don't know if I could go that far of like saying it's smarter than people think it is, of like, oh yeah, Pleasure Island's supposed to be Disney World, and it's like Zemeckis dealing with the fact that he's gone down this path, and like all the clocks are, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
all they are, all this kind of stuff, and it's supposed to be him reflecting on his career. I don't really buy that,
I don't buy
but
that.
I think it's a weird movie that if you're looking for something to watch with your family, you shouldn't necessarily watch this, because you should watch the other movie we will be starting to talk about in a minute or two.
Dude, every moment I
That's
was just waiting. I was just thinking in my head, I cannot wait for Guillermo del Toro's version.
yeah,
Cannot wait because the more I watch that, the more I watch this version.
which we will definitely have a review for that one when we both get to see it. Amari will no doubt get to watch it before me, unless Netflix shows it at one of the movie theaters that I'm near.
Yeah, that. But I mean, but that
Yeah.
gets me more excited because like it's
And even my mom. My mom is like not necessarily the biggest fan of Del Toro. Like she did not like Shape of Water, or even I think shut it off at one point. And she appreciated Pan's Labyrinth when she saw it in theaters like 16 years ago. But she was like, that's not my kind of movie way back when. And so but she is down for that. Like she watched that trailer and she was like, I want to see that as soon as it
well,
is available for us to watch.
it's taking the story of Pinocchio and Guillermo del Toro is really just like, all right, we're gonna take that story, we're gonna expand it, we're gonna put some more stuff in there, some more actually like very just interesting stuff that you can put into a story like that, and it's just very intriguing. Like it's just everything about it, right down to the visuals. The visuals look amazing. I mean, it's stop motion animation, but the character design looks great. Everything looks great about that one, and it's just the more I watched this version, I was just kind of like, I don't really want them to just do a carbon copy of Pinocchio. If you're gonna do a carbon copy of the original movie, I would you rather just see some personality into the movie. I don't want to just see
Mm-hmm.
the bare minimum of just like here's a bunch of sweeping CGI shots, and here's a story that's right there, and we'll do a cover of of a song, and then there you go. But like I would like to see more, which is kind of why I liked Cinderella, like Kenneth Branahan's Cinderella, because it sticks with it, but it's like it sticks with the original story, but it feels very different. It feels different, and it feels like it's his own voice, and especially the damn dance sequence in that movie, which I would
Still
say
haven't seen this.
it is so damn good. It is so damn romantic, and I before I was like I didn't even care about Cinderella. Watching that movie, I was like, okay, that's actually kind of touching. I actually do enjoy that. That's actually pretty good. But yeah, this
My
one,
favorite live action remake has been David Lowery's Pete's Dragon.
I see that.
And I got to see Brad Oz Cinderella at some point. I'm not in any rush for that, but I also just don't necessarily care about a lot of the older
Yeah, I
Disney
mean,
princess movies. So
I mean, it's for me, it's just like I don't know why we're making a bunch of live action remakes. I mean, it's cool seeing it in live
mhm.
action too, and it's a nice idea, but it's like I don't know why we're allowed.
I at least respect, and I know some of my family members who will inevitably watch this will be like, "Oh yeah," like a lot of them really enjoy the Maleficent movies, and I can respect those
Nope,
because
I
at least
can't.
they're like,
No.
no, I can respect them on this level. They're taking the story that is familiar and doing something different with it, rather than
Oh,
carbon copy.
with
But
the my rule of like the first ones usually like when you do something different, it's cool. Like it's okay. Like you give it a pass. I can't speak for myself.
well, I don't like either of those movies, but I can respect them on the very level
Okay.
of it's not a carbon copy remake of Sleeping Beauty. It's Sleeping Beauty from Maleficent's perspective. I
No, that is
My
fair.
mom loves both of those movies, or she loves the first one. I think she didn't like the second one. And I barely paid attention to the second one, if I'm honest,
I
because it
just
bored me to tears. Um, but I do respect movies that do something a little bit different, rather than, oh yeah, it's the same movie, but now it's this. But some movies like try to do their own thing, like, and I think that's why David Lowery's Pete's Dragon works for me, because I've never watched the original, but I know it's like a blend of 2D and live action anyway. But I mean, David Lowery is just such a great director and brings like a homemade quality to it that makes it feel original, even if I don't necessarily know if it is or not. Um, but speaking of things that feel homemade and original, and that
Ooh,
probably has 1/10 of the viewers that Pinocchio has already gotten.
probably
Um,
Apollo 10 and a half.
yep,
There's another title under there. And
a space age childhood,
there we go. Forgot. I always forget that part. I just remember.
directed and I believe written by Richard Linklater.
Mhm.
Um, I think it's written by him. I would need to fact check that. Um,
This was so nice. I
yeah,
this
I
was
keep forgetting this movie came out this year, and I keep meaning to revisit it just because that first watch was like, wow, that I love Richard Linklater. People who talk to me could find that out pretty easily because I love dialogue driven movies.
I mean,
But
I love the Before trilogy. I think it's a really one of the best trilogies out there. I think
yeah,
it's really well, it's smartly written, smartly directed. He does a great job with that. I still got to see Boyhood. I still got to
yeah,
see
I got
Slacker.
to rewatch Boyhood,
Yeah,
which
and
I'll
I
probably love.
and
Like
I
I love this.
yeah, no, this was like I like the fact that one he chose to do rotoscoping, and
Yeah,
the way he did rotoscoping this one, because I know he did it before in another film,
two things.
two films. I know he did it before, but this one it feels refined. Because I've seen clips from and photos from the other films that he's done it for, and this one it feels really refined, and it's just a
Yeah,
very
I
just
still need to see the other two, and in fact, a lot of my friends who are massive Linklater fans like me, because like I'm still going through his filmography. I kind of decided, oh, the new one's out, and I haven't finished his filmography yet, so I'll just watch the new one. Um, and a lot of friends of mine are like, oh yeah, like it's okay to not so good for them this one, but
yeah.
his other two are like, holy cow, like in terms of their story and in terms of like what they do with the animation. One of them is like his Lynch movie Waking Life is like based on a dream he had. A Scanner Darkly, of course, is an adaptation of the Philip K. Dick novel, kind of like Blade Runner and
Mhm.
Total Recall. Um, so I and Scanner Darkly stars Keanu Reeves.
Of course, yeah.
So
One I've basically seen the most of, like in terms of images and clips.
yeah, and I'm excited to go through both of those. But if it's true that this one's the weak one of the bunch, those two are going to be like magnificent movies because I mean, partially this comes from growing up in Houston from ages 3 to 9. And although I didn't have like the exact same experience as the main character, because of course he's grown up in the 60s during the space race, all that, it definitely like, oh yeah, you get insert shots of them going to Whataburger. You get like the old school TV shows that he watches every night. You feel like, oh yeah, this is Richard Linklater looking back on his past, where he's usually just created characters to look back at their past, and sometimes they're slightly like him, but this is fully like almost certainly a stand-in for Richard Linklater, and it's filled to the brim with a cozy Jack Black narration that doesn't feel obnoxious at all, in my opinion, at least.
Oh,
Um,
didn't find it at all, and it's actually nice that with okay, I mean I didn't grow up in Texas, so
yeah,
so I don't know, but like it was nice the fact that like you get a sense, like you were saying, you get a sense that it does feel like a world that's been lived in, you know.
yeah,
And I think that it's great that they have a bunch of references. I mean, they have a bunch of TV show references. Some TV shows that actually I did watch when I was little, but you do feel like it is a very it's a lived in world. It somewhat got me kind of like it was a nice nostalgic vibe to it, even though it
mm-hmm.
was rotoscope. But the way they were doing some shots and stuff, where they were like, oh, like here's what this magazine looks like, here's what this TV show looked like, and just the underlining theme of this is the space race. So in during that time, obviously, it was one of the more or less defining moments of the U.S. because
Yeah,
so
and it focuses on this family
yeah, and
during
that's
that time rather than, oh yeah, here's all this stuff. Like it's also a great companion piece with like First Man in a way, because First Man you get all the training and the personal stakes for
Yeah.
Neil Armstrong and all that,
One
but this is like the
one Saturday.
global kind of scale of one family's perspective that is kind of the stand-in for so many families' perspective on the events.
One is better than the other one, but
Huh?
I can see, but I do see what you mean though, because there is that family aspect that they do bring into Apollo 10 and a half, and I think, and there's also just I don't know, you were saying about the narration, yeah, I didn't feel like it was obnoxious. It was just it felt like I was reading somebody's journal,
Yeah.
going through like their journal, and you're just imagining, which I don't know if that's like much of his why he chose to do rotoscoping for this one, because it feels like if you just picked up somebody's journal and you're like, flipping through it, like
Well, I also think that there's a quality of like to truly replicate what it was like during that time. Sure, you could build sets and you could do all that kind of stuff, but with the way the world is right now, it was probably the right choice to like just draw it all up and be like, oh yeah, this is how I remember it.
that's
I
true.
think Linklater's a visual artist too, so he could. And those ham and cheese sandwiches would not look nearly as good if they weren't animated in that rotoscope fashion.
They look good. Even they oh my god, this look oh my god.
because there's something about the animated quality of food that makes things pop just a little bit more. Like I like food on
Yeah.
spoiler alert for everyone. I like food on screen whenever I see it, even if it's food I don't like because I'm a picky eater. I'm just like,
It's,
oh yeah, show me food on screen. I like that. But animated gives it an extra texture of like, oh, that looks because you can't have that animated beignet. You can't have that like the beignets in Princess and the Frog. They look so good, and yes, regular beignets are so good too. But you can't have an animated beignet, and you want that, but it's impossible. And so that impossible want um, is so interesting.
oh my god.
Where you look at a regular ham and cheese sandwich, you're like, oh yeah, I could do that right now. But an animated ham and cheese sandwich, I can't have that. Anyway, rambling about animated food.
You had like a moment. I'm so sorry for cutting you off. Oh my god, because you were just like a moment there, which is
Well, it's like I'm a gerbil almost when it comes to that kind of thing of like, oh yes, this is my thing. And of course, Amari and I hope
this is
to
my
eventually make movies together, and I'm gonna be like, okay, we gotta photograph some beautiful looking food. And he's like, why?
Full Metal Jacket with just food. This is my thing. There are many like it, but this one is mine. But you know, there is that. Yeah, no, there's a lot of
Yeah.
on screen. Well, I guess there's a lot of good food porn in this one. Even if it is
Yeah, there's that. There's I mean, it's all just like images. And of course, I watched it with my mom. Um, and my mom grew up around the same time. She was a little younger than Linklater, and Linklater's stand in would have been at that time. But she was like, oh my gosh, the Astrodome. And she like remembered living in neighborhoods like the main character lives in. And so it was just like full on blast of like, oh yeah, I remember this kind of stuff. And I remember when we got to go to the amusement park and oh my gosh, just going crazy about all that stuff. Um,
I also think just like this movie in particular it was just a nice sweet story. It felt like it was just like a
yeah,
peaceful story. It was small, so it was pretty much small scale, and you're just kind of looking through the eyes of just an individual, like a child just kind of growing up along with this, the space race, and it was just kind of like, yeah, no, I mean it's just a I wasn't expecting such a sweet movie, honestly, and just a very just
yeah.
like a nice comfort movie. Basically, there's no real the sad moments are just when stuff is just life, and
Yeah,
they don't really dwell on it though. It's kind of like, oh,
it's
here,
a slice of life
yeah,
movie.
they're just like, here's life, like, and like sometimes this happens, but they don't.
Yeah.
But there's no like dramatic scene. Not that.
Oh yeah, I'm
Yeah,
starting to remember one of the sad bits of like, yeah,
yeah.
oh yeah,
Well, I mean,
because that there is like that reality of like, oh yeah, that happens, and
no, it
it,
sucks.
yeah,
But like, but I will say though that I mean it's been a while since I mean I just remember loving it so much and whatnot. But
Yeah,
I mean,
this was one of those movies that we freaked out on, like
yeah, we
because
talked about it. We were like, "Oh, so good," and we just never talked about it for months. But no, but I mean, not that it needs a giant dramatic scene or anything like that. I mean, movies can do that stuff like that. I mean, I love dramatic scenes, but it was nice that this one was kind of like, yeah, stuff happens and it's life and it's it sucks, but you kind of you're gonna keep on going. So this movie just it's like, all right, we're gonna keep on going with the story, but this happened, but
yeah,
it just
it's like very much a collection of this is what life was like. The
yeah,
stuff you saw on TV, the stuff you heard on the radio, the food you ate, the games you played in the neighborhood. And even though that was not my life at all, it's kind of like Boyhood is more kind of a representation of my life. Like there's parts of that movie where I'm like, I remember driving through downtown Houston when it looked like that.
wow.
Um,
Well, I mean, I do remember.
but
I do remember. Like, it's nice that this movie was also like, oh, like when you went to go outside and play with your friends, I was like, oh yeah, I remember doing like recess time and just playing
yeah,
Foursquare or whatever like that. I don't think there was Foursquare in this, but like you would play, your various games and
this
stuff.
movie feels like the word cul-de-sac.
There we go. Yep.
This that's what it feels like, and so that comforting presence is like I know we kind of tried to close the book on Pinocchio, but it's like Pinocchio is like, oh yeah, let's take your nostalgia and make it fresh with the fresh coat of paint. Where this is just like, no, this is unfiltered nostalgia, all the highs, all the lows, all the games in the cul-de-sac put together. Like this is all that,
And
and
I feel like
some of it's good and some of it's bad, but it's all like part of someone's childhood, it's just part of someone's life. There's a little companion bit of like some of the nostalgic visuals, which Amari still hasn't seen this film, and the nostalgia of how the Black Phone does a couple things as well, which eventually we'll do a review on or a part review on that one once Amari watches it.
but like they see me doing this like the whole surfer, but for this, yeah, I know it felt like, yeah, it feels like the word cul-de-sac, but it doesn't romanticize. The thing I love about
Yeah,
one of the things I love about this is the fact that it doesn't romanticize the nuclear family lifestyle or the nuclear family lifestyle.
yeah. It's
It's
very. This is how it was,
Yeah, this is how it was
and
in his in Richard Linklater's eyes. It was like, oh, this is how it felt like for me,
yeah,
and it's not romanticizing it. More sake, it's just a guy just looking back on it. Where most other films would be like, oh, we're gonna romanticize the living shit out of
yeah. Forget all the racism. Um,
this.
no, there's the racism. There's the parents who do not like hippies. Although clearly, if Richard Linklater is supposed to be one of those kids, one of their kids definitely became a hippie. Um,
Yeah, so I mean,
yeah,
I'm glad it doesn't do that, and it just tells it as it is. But I think, yeah, and like you said before, this movie hasn't really been. I feel like it hasn't been seen by a lot of people. I think maybe Richard
yeah.
Linklater fans and people fans of just maybe animation and people who are just generally interested. But it's not like this.
And people like know the Before trilogy, know Boyhood sometimes, but know Dazed and Confused, for
Oh,
example.
Days of Confused.
But modern
You're pretty good.
Linklater is kind of always falling to the side. And I think if you choose a family movie, although this one is now like 6 months old, you should watch this one instead of Pinocchio. You can watch Pinocchio later. It'll always be on Disney Plus. This Netflix release is actually really good. And it's worth watching. So that's what I have to say on that.
No, it's really good. I really think a lot of people should really check out Apollo 10 and a half. If not just,
Me too.
yeah, if anything for the vibes.
The vibes.
Nice vibes.